Students, welcome back to school. It's been a tough summer, but we are here at Fall 2020 doing remote learning, and you are enrolled in Woodworking 101. What could possibly go wrong with the remote learning woodworking class? Today we're going to be building a chalkboard. I made a video that explains everything you need to know about building the chalkboard, so follow along, take careful notes because you'll be quizzed on it at the end of the week. Okay, any questions on the video?
Can you slow that down a bit?
Slow that down a bit.
This video is essentially about building a frame around chalkboard material. You can pick up a chalkboard sheet at Home Depot for like $10. It's basically a 1/4 inch thick sheet of black melamine. If you want to make a whiteboard instead, just get white melamine. And then we're going to build a frame around that material. So the first thing is to cut the pieces for the frames to be of equal width. These I'm making 2 inches wide. The wood I've chosen for this project is some rustic white oak. Now I'm setting up my saw to cut a depth of 3/8 of an inch. This will be the depth and width of the rabbet, or rebate for my British friends. This is the recess in the frame that will support the chalkboard. First I'll cut the depth of the rabbet. Then turn the board to cut the width of the rabbet. The table saw should generate a clean cut, but a shoulder plane or chisel can clean out any imperfections in the rabbet. I'm cutting the miters for the frame on the miter saw. If you don't own a miter saw, you can use the table saw or even just a miter box. Now that the pieces are cut with the 45-degree angles for the miter joints, I'm ready for the glue up. I'm using Type-on 3 because it has a longer open time. You can mess with various 90-degree clamps, but I find a ratcheting band clamp works best for miter joint glue ups. Once the glue is dried, I removed the band clamp. Then I sanded out the imperfections. Some woodworkers like to make jigs for just about any process they do. I don't use jigs very often, but the spline jig is one that is unavoidable if you want to do splines on your miter joints. Basically, it's a 90-degree cradle that sits on this base at a 45-degree angle. At the bottom of the base are these two UHMW runners. Essentially, how the spline jig works is that the blade protrudes here, and the width of the blade determines how wide the spline is. The depth of the blade determines how deep into the miter joint the spline goes, and then the fence determines the location where that spline is going to be located. The fence is adjustable, it's just held on with these two clamps. I'm running each of the miter joints through the jig. After cutting the 4 corners, I have a 1/8 inch saw kerf, or gap. By flipping the frame around and running it a second time through the jig, I'm left with a thicker 1/4 inch gap. I have a piece of walnut that's the same thickness as the spline gap. I'm cutting this into rough trapezoidal shapes. These will be the splines.
You got some splining to do.
After applying a liberal coat of glue, I insert the splines into the frame and let them dry. Once dry, I can cut off the excess with a saw and plane it flush with a block plane. Now I can do the final hand sanding of the frame and we're ready to apply some finish. Oak is one of the few wood species that I actually prefer staining. Most hardwoods will leave their natural color, but oak looks good with a decent stain such as Early American, which I'm using here. And yes, you're not doing it right unless you spill your stain on the table. With the stain dried, I'm applying General Finishes Armor Seal for the top coat. So we've applied our finish and we're ready to add the chalkboard material. We just put it in there upside down, center it, and we're ready to actually attach it to the frame. Now to do that, you can drive basically a small nail, a brad nail, into the side of the frame just to hold it in place. Or you can use one of these tools, which are called point drivers, and they're made specifically for adding materials to picture frames. So if you do a lot of work with picture frames, it's quite worth the small investment. Just line it up to the edge of the frame, pull the trigger, and it adds what's called an insert or a flexible insert. And that's the completed chalkboard, all ready to be used. Thank you for watching.